comes the bride, joyful in stride, straight to her master.
This rendition of Felix Mendelssohn's Wedding March, sung by the Hymantact Family Choir, not only puts words to the renowned tune, but tells the audience plainly how marriage is viewed in Moralton. Woman exists to support man's endeavors, no matter what objections she may have, and to ensure that his place upon his pedestal is a comfortable one. Even if what he wants goes against her personal values, she is to carry out whatever duty she is given with a grateful smile. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 states, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." This verse is integral to the episode where the song is featured, Help. From the emergence of mankind, it was believed that women are an extension of their husbands, as Eve was created from the rib of Adam. The pain of childbirth acts as an eternal reminder that women are weak-willed and weak-minded, which is why man, who has dominion over every living thing that moveth upon the earth, has dominion over their family too. Adam was handcrafted by God himself. Her act of giving life pales in comparison. Yet, the paramount duty a woman fulfills for her husband is continuing his legacy. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the sons of one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Welcome to today's episode of Moralton University, where we're going to be exploring the people who do it all unseen, so their husbands can walk into Forgetties at the end of the day with their heads held high and their stomachs full. The ones who can cook ribs as divine as the rib they came from, the women of Moralton.
Lady, hear me tonight, 'cause my feeling is just so right as we dance by the moonlight. Can't you see, you're my delight?
When we first meet Millie Fakey in the episode Repression, she has set the table for a romantic evening with her husband, hair and makeup done. Fakey comes home and he can't even look her in the eye out of guilt over his affair with Nurse Bendy, rushing upstairs while leaving Millie ignored and unsatisfied. It's implied that this happens often as Millie laments how often he talks about her. Yet she tries to fulfill her duties as a wife no matter how often she is rejected. Principal Fakey acknowledges that she's beautiful. He knows that she loves him. She protested her own wedding, not able to stop the performance of womanhood even during what is meant to be the start of her happy ending. Despite doing everything right, Millie is considered the antagonist in her divorce. This is due to Fakey accusing her of infidelity upon learning of his own contraction of gonorrhea from his own affair with Bendy. He slanders her publicly and makes a loud show of throwing her out, which ruins her reputation in Moralton. Principal Fakey physically throwing her out of the house is the only instance of domestic violence we actually witness in the show. However, there are telling background details that we will elaborate on later. Later on, Millie's character model is seen in Sinville, looking much happier and living more lavishly. She is partaking in the local street festivities. In Help, we see Dolores stoop down among the gaggle of future brides, proudly showing off their glittering wedding rings. Her expression is just as excited as the rest. However, there are some subtle clues in the show that lead us to believe she is a divorcee. Dolores refers to herself as Miss Stoop Down. Dolores' name is also listed among the residents of the Aloneford apartments. It is unlikely that Dolores is a widow, as there would be a clear distinction in how she is referred to. Even if Dolores was unhappy with her marriage, she would have forever had her identity tied to her late husband. On the name board in the Aloneford, we see the widow of Link McMissons is referred to distinctly. We only see two other female staff members at Diorama Elementary, Agnes Sculptham, who we know to live alone despite desiring companionship, and Miss Second Opinionson, who cares for her ailing father and half-brother all on her own. Historically, in real life and in the media, working at a school is a station in life reserved for spinsters, lonely, unmarried women. Notably, Dolores and Millie have no children, meaning they are tied to their ex-husband by past marital status only. Technically, they never have to see their ex-husbands again if they don't want to, but they would always be known as the ex-Mrs. So-and-so, as seen by how Reverend Putty refers to Millie. This comes with its own setbacks. In Moralton, a woman who has not had children is seen as shirking her only responsibility in life. Children are God's job security. Ergo, people must reproduce to keep the Institute of Religion going. This ties into the conservative stance against abortion, or in some extreme cases, even contraception. When divorced parents and custody disputes are discussed in the show, we see them only from the perspective of the mother. However, it is safe to assume that Moralton does not see them favorably either. A mother's job in an evangelical society is to care for the children, to ensure that they are seen and not heard. When she forces her husband to leave her or cruelly abandons her husband, she is giving him no choice but to take a role in parenting his children. It is often espoused by men that courts act purely in the woman's favor, that the mother will get full custody of the children no matter what. This is misleading. The supposed statistic is the result of men not fighting for custody. When they do, statistically, they have a fair chance of getting it. It is possible that the Moralton court systems function similarly.
A trophy wife is a young, attractive woman who acts as a status symbol for an often older, more successful man. She is treated as an accessory. Any desires beyond luxury are not considered. She has a reputation to uphold, being an extension of her husband's success. Yet she chooses to hang out in the much more middle-class part of town, in a buffet of all places. This is because Dottie Trophy Wife is fundamentally lonely. It is possible that Dottie does not really know what she wants. One of the first things she tells Florence is that her husband has little free time to spend with her, to the point that they could not have a biological child together. This seems to mean that she and Mr. Trophy Wife both wanted a child. However, considering Dottie's complete disinterest in her own daughter, she may have felt that co-parenting would bring them closer together, or that a child would secure her place in the marriage. We know that whatever her reasoning, it was unsuccessful. As with Sunday's placement in the timeline, she spends most of the show unmarried. It is easy to label Dottie's distress with her situation as that of a gold digger in between meal tickets. She asserts to Florence that she'll just go out and find another husband. But she realizes the implication of this almost immediately. At this moment, there is little difference between herself, the average Moralton woman, and a woman they would both look down on for selling herself. Dottie clearly enjoyed the lifestyle her ex-husband could afford her, but when we see her pursue other men, it is never men who are highly sought after and well off. Her actions are at best misguided, and at worst abusive to the people around her. But what she is seeking is companionship nonetheless. Florence Papermouth stands out like a sore thumb in Moralton, a fat woman with pink hair who makes an earnest attempt to connect with others, and this was before she initiated her own divorce. A woman who does not fit the beauty standard is expected to settle for whatever she can get, as though she has to make up for the space she takes up physically. Florence, though, is outspoken, one might even call her loud. She's subtly witty in the face of Dottie's fatphobic microaggression during their first meeting, later on defending herself and the things she's passionate about very adamantly. Fat women in modern media are expected to either be utterly miserable with their bodies or socially aware activists who love themselves wholeheartedly. Florence is much more realistic. Fat is a bad word to her. It takes strength to stand up to Dottie, but it also takes strength to do so and admit that it hurts her feelings through a clearly shaken voice. In fact, she is often visibly nervous or unsure when taking the social risks that she does. She has the same prejudices as the rest of Moralton. Aside from agreeing with Putty's bigoted sermons, she is more concerned with the zombies' nakedness than the countless deaths, and is scandalized by the bus to Sinville. Her relationship with food is written honestly as a negative one. She eats when her negative emotions become too much to handle, something she is clearly ashamed of, covering her plate when Reverend Putty spots her. The ex-Mrs. Papermouth is often defined by her relationships with the men in her life, whether this be her planned romantic arc with Reverend Putty or her not-so-clean break from her ex-husband Roger. A common misconception is that Florence broke up her marriage and created an unstable childhood for her daughter to pursue a relationship with a man, which is completely unsubstantiated by canon. We are shown what her breaking point was. In one of Florence's escapist fantasies, Rod jumps over her in a motorcycle, telling her that she's perfectly safe, which she assures him she knows. Florence's ex-husband Roger is a police officer, a man whose job it is to protect and serve, to keep people safe. In reality, he is an easily frightened man who uses his gun to cope with fear and anger, and the father of her child. She goes against her best interest in an evangelical society for the health and happiness of her daughter and herself. In Sundays, we see a short discussion take place between Florence and Dottie, stemming from the topic of their divorces. Dottie makes a passive comment about how Florence got to humiliate Roger. In Dottie's eyes, being the one to break it off is a power move. She herself got dumped, so to speak. Florence doesn't see it this way. Dottie follows up the conversation by asking if Florence gets to see her daughter more than one Sunday a month, to which she clams up in response. There are two ways to interpret this, as we aren't familiar with how custody arrangements pan out in Moralton. Option 1, the literal takeaway. We take Dottie's wording at face value and consider that divorced women are blatantly unfavored in court versus their husbands, simply by principle of their gender. Option 2. We take it a bit less literally and consider what would be significant about Sunday. Church. It may be that the custody agreement is more similar to arrangements seen in a real-world setting, where a father often has visitation on the weekends, meaning that often the father would have the child during the weekend and also during Sundays for church, meaning that the wife would only get to attend service with their child once a month, which would no doubt feel significant in a community like their own. Though we don't have concrete evidence to either side, we can assume both these arrangements still favor the husband in a way, whether it be in a literal sense or a spiritual one.
The core of Liberta's conflict centers around her decision to marry Clay, but this is far more significant than some seem to think. The true instigator of Liberta's conflict and upbringing is the society that they live in. Women in Moralton don't have the same freedom of decision that the men do. Their options for a healthy adult life are woefully limited. A teacher, a caregiver, a spinster, a mother. The job market for a single woman in Moralton isn't so vast. In such a community, a woman's purpose is to marry, bear children, and be an eternal caregiver. So it's unsurprising that Blaberta, and the women she had acquainted herself with, were seeking out such a goal. In Blaberta's case, we see her presented as a bit of an odd one out. For reasons we don't fully see, she is the last to marry. Though this isn't for lack of trying, we see how willing she is to please Censordoll and her restrained enthusiasm towards singing with her family. Blaberta seems to fail at every endeavor she pursues, which would lead into her desperation to claim marriage when she is finally presented the opportunity. Blaberta tries to present herself as a model wife. Despite the reality of the situation, the Puppingtons as a whole place high value on said appearance, and seem to adhere to this better than most. Their conflicts remain mostly internal. They're good at pretending. In the episode Best Christmas Ever, we see Blaberta initiate the idea of divorce, stating directly to Clay that she wants one. While this thought is spurred to use as a deflection, it's clear that Blaberta does genuinely want to separate from Clay, a feeling that is no doubt mutual. Blaberta is shown sitting in silence, reflecting in her own despair at the prospect of what could await her if she did go through with it. A woman who has been married as long as she has would have little options after splitting from her husband. It would be likely she would end up shoved in the aloneford with little to no income, so in many cases it is better to suffer in silence than put her life up to chance. The divorce system favors the man, leaving the woman no choice but to comply in an unhappy, unhealthy situation just to retain a sense of safety. Because of this, it's easier to have an affair than to break off a marriage completely.
Stephanie is the most unusual woman in Moralton. Oral takes note of her warmth when he first meets her, though she would expect people to first notice her multitude of piercings. The piercings and tattoos say the most about her desire to be visibly queer and challenge the assumptions of the Christian hegemony. On a metaphorical level, they are an act of self-reclamation in the face of purity culture. She sullies herself of her own volition. She is self-penetrating and doesn't need anyone to do it for her. Running a sex shop that sells penetrative toys is also a shade of this. The piercings also act as a masochistic tic. If she experiences a feeling or thought that troubles her, Stephanie pierces herself as a distraction. The unusual circumstances of her birth implies a similar upbringing to Censordoll, with a controlling mother. In contrast to Censordoll, Stephanie chooses secularity and self-actualization and is happier for it. Self-expression, something absent in the lives of most Moralton women, is what she's all about. Stephanie is implied to have deconstructed her religious upbringing and freed herself from the self-loathing she endured. There is a pronounced double standard when it comes to the acceptable behaviors exhibited by young people in relationships. We use the term acceptable loosely. The prom being called the arm's length dance presumes chastity on the part of its participants and discourages hanky-panky, but the fact that the prom is being had at all is still a sign that they want the kids desiring heteronormative partnerships. Kim kissing Stephanie only serves to reinforce this theme. She is doing it for male attention, whether that is to upset the chaperone or to attract the attention of a boy she likes. To Kim, this behavior is unserious. It's only for laughs. But to Stephanie, it means everything. To Kim, these actions are a signal to advertise her willingness to try things that other girls her age might be too shy to do. In turn, Carl is drawn to her complex mating dance. Stephanie is not only heartbroken by her unrequited feelings for Kim, but she has been betrayed by someone she considered a friend, and used to titillate Kim's crush without her consent. Even if Kim didn't think that she was hurting her, or even intended to do so, her actions violated Stephanie. At the end of the day, Moralton's society discourages sexual impropriety, but at least heterosexual impropriety can be remedied by the institute of marriage, whereas homosexual impropriety is entirely off the table. In our video Purity Culture Equals Rape Culture, we discussed Nurse Bendy being a victim of childhood sexual abuse as a preteen. This resulted in her becoming pregnant with Joe, who she gave up to Dr. Second Opinionson, Joe's father and her rapist. As an adult, Bendy has a reputation for being dumb and promiscuous. Men treat her as a sex object and have little respect for her. Meanwhile, she is not acknowledged by any of the women except for Miss Second Opinionson. Dr. Potterswheel, Reverend Putty, and Danielle all make derogatory comments about her intellect. At one point, Potterswheel tells her to just stand there and look pretty after she makes a silly comment. Principal Fakey, who she is having a sexual affair with, is consumed by his lust for her. He doesn't care about her as a person, just as something that is younger and more exciting to him than his wife. To cope with the trauma of her childhood, Bendy behaves as a caricature of what a woman should be. There are two distinct personas she adopts. The first she plays out in the privacy of her home. This character is a doting mother and housewife to her teddy bears, Hubby and Sunny. She has no control over how other people see her or the relationships she has, so she finds a sense of control through them. As inanimate objects, they cannot judge her for her past or her public image, and she can prescribe them personalities of her choice. She uses them to roleplay a life that has been denied to her as the result of her being a fallen woman. The second character she plays is her public-facing persona, the sexualized blonde bombshell. She trades the childish, maternal nature of the first character for a more vapid, male-centric personality. This allows her to gain more acceptance from men who ignore her otherwise. One example of this is her dyeing her naturally black hair blonde so that she doesn't look like a stuffy library lady. We've also spoken about Censordoll and about how her mother committed an act of female genital mutilation by removing her ovaries in infancy. In the episode where this is revealed, Censordoll both treats it as an act of cruelty from her mother, but also something that makes her holier than others. Censordoll sees herself as being immaculate from conception. Concupiscence is the Latin term for original sin, which translates to involuntary reproductive or sexual or sensual desire. Censordoll, lacking that desire from infancy, believes herself to be free of it.
Mother, I hardly think the Reverend Putty is sufficiently pious enough to even tackle the subject of original sin. Of course I'm more suited! What a question! My lack of eggs is not a hindrance, it is an asset! Don't push me down like that when you did this to me! Well then, what good was relieving me of my reproductive parts if I cannot be an expert on the matter? I was an infant when I had them. I was an infant when you had them removed. So for all intents and purposes, I am immaculate from conception.
She believes that her lack of sex drive makes her an expert on the matter of original sin. This act has a similar precedent in religious history concerning the Christian cult of the Scopsi, who performed acts of genital mutilation in order to curb sexual activity and be closer to God. But in the case of the Scopsi, it's the outer genitalia that is sealed, and the inner gonads are left alone, leaving the sex drive and hormones intact. It's the opposite for Censordoll. While maybe underdeveloped, her external genitalia is intact, but her internal drive has been displaced psychologically and manifests as an obsession with phallic objects and acts of domination, such as eggs and picket signs.
Why wouldn't I, Oral? They're one of life's only pleasures, next to picketing.
Picketing?
Picketing.
The picketing act is almost reminiscent of the devil and his pitchfork. Censordoll dresses very puritanically, almost nun-like. This act of bodily cloistering is extended to her control of the library's content. She readily has a firing barrel indoors and uses it to torch any literature she considers obscene, which is all of it. She destroys books on evolution, anatomy, sexuality, art, and other topics she considers unholy. Much of the violence she inflicts is likely a reflection of the violence she experienced at the hands of her mother in childhood. She has a mother complex to rival Clay's, but inverted. In Before Oral, several of Censordoll's scenes start with her haloed by the sun or the moon, casting her in a holier-than-thou light. She even admits to seeing herself on par with God, which is blasphemy in Moralton. She wields feminine symbols like maternal nature and bodily features in order to exact control over others, but they're not integral to her identity or how she functions.
Self-pleasure is considered a sin. In the episode Pleasure, Putty's sermon drones on about how almost every joy life has to offer is the work of the devil. Wilberta casts a judgmental eye on Clay when the Reverend mentions alcohol, but shrinks into herself when he brings up masturbation. The only instruments available in Moralton for a woman to pleasure themselves with are various hardware tools. These instruments actively cause harm and even mutilate depending on the intensity. Self-pleasure equals punishment. A woman cannot truly feel good with the use of these objects. Though buried pleasures does exist, we don't see the average Moralton woman visit there.
Dottie and Florence are on the opposite ends of the spectrum of conventional attraction, a fact they are detrimentally aware of. Dottie goes through great lengths to maintain her looks. In her introduction scene, she's implied to be both bulimic and anorexic. To Dottie, it is a fact of life that the men around her are hopelessly attracted to her, and the women around her would die to be her. She needs this to be true because her looks are her currency in the society. She can't maintain her lifestyle without a husband, and used goods are not considered desirable on their own. Florence, on the other hand, is very aware of the fact that she is not considered desirable. At the church bake sale, she watches Dottie claim that merely walking past the Reverend will make his day, and it works. When it's her turn to talk to him, she flattens the fabric on her dress in hesitation. Most tragically, when Rod calls out to God, asking what he's done, it's unclear what Florence believes him to be referring to. The fact that he called out Dottie's name as he climaxed, or the fact he had sex with her at all. Either way, Florence attempts to reassure him and says that she understands. Dottie and Florence have similar traits that could be considered flaws depending on the scenario, especially in Moralton. They're both opinionated and somewhat free-spirited women with a lot of gumption. Dottie is generally seen as overbearing. It is likely her personality caused her divorce, but she is still very much desired. Florence, on the other hand, is treated with hostility for making small talk, as though being seen talking to her is a humiliation. In Season 2, Episode 1, Reverend Putty asks the congregation how a fat woman and a pretty woman can both be made in God's image. Dottie points out that this has to mean that Reverend Putty is more attracted to her than Florence. However, it is more relevant to associate this question with the way morality is often assigned to body types, even by secular people. A skinny woman is following society's expectations. As a result, she is assumed to be virtuous and disciplined. A fat woman goes against the beauty standard, what is demanded of her body. Therefore, she is assumed to be lazy and lacking character. There exists a trope in the media where a fat woman is excessively good and selfless. This is less a subversion and more expecting plus-size people to make up for their looks, notably plus-size women, as fat male characters are allowed much more variety.
When Fakey throws his wife out of their home, he says,
"Diseased harlot, I trusted you! I was going to give you a baby!"
as though a child is a gift bestowed upon a woman by their husband. Giving the baby implies that they don't make the baby together. The father gives, and the mother does all the work of upbringing. Though often dismissive in terms of more fatherly escapades, like giving advice or guidance to her sons, Wilberta still provides all the autonomous mechanisms a mother should by definition. Cleaning, cooking, housework, while still being cordial with Oral on a surface level. She is not often cruel, but dismissive, which is taken to another level with Shapey due to various outside factors. It is not a mother's place to give a son guidance or teach them lessons. Her place is that of a homemaker. Note that if she did have a daughter, this would likely be much different, as her role would be far more suited for raising a young girl.
Clay's mother miscarried 10 children before having Clay. In her determination to have a child, she disregarded her own health in the process, which indirectly led to her premature death. Putting a potential child's life over the health of the mother has become a hot-button topic in the issue of women's bodily autonomy and the politics surrounding abortion rights. For Angela, she may have believed her life to be negligible compared to her duty to produce an offspring as a Christian woman. This is one of 2 cases in the show where a boy is directly raised by his mother without the close influence of his father. Mrs. Littler. The books visible in the background of Tommy's kitchen in God's Blunders are as follows. Smacks or snacks, you decide. Bake or get hit. A woman's place is in his mouth. Pick up the phone, the stove is calling. Silence or violence. Shut up and cook. Domestic violence towards the wife is not really touched upon in the show, but may have been explored had the show continued. Mrs. Hymantact. Blaberta's mother, while showing the tendency to discipline her children, still shows mild favoritism towards her son Lunchbox as opposed to his sisters, who she triangulates rivalry between. Example, whoever made the disturbance couldn't possibly have been Lunchbox, but she doesn't provide the same defense for Medela despite her perfect pitch. In light of her pregnancy from rape, Agnes Sculptham, running out of options, chooses to terminate it herself with a coat hanger. In reality, banning abortion doesn't result in no abortions. Women simply choose to undergo even riskier abortions. It's clear Agnes does not want to be a mother. When it turns out she's still pregnant with the twin, she chooses to keep it or realizes she has no choice except to do so, after Dr. Potter's wheel takes notes of it. Agnes is hauled into the role of motherhood regardless of her desire on the matter.
At several points in Season 1, we hear Putty give sermons that imply abortion, or the rejection of God's gift of life, to be a sin. This is in The Lord's Greatest Gift and Best Christmas Ever. First, where Blaberta takes note that the sermon had been given around the same time Shapey was born. Then Blaberta tells Clay that the sermon had been about him not wanting Shapey, in reference to Joseph allowing the baby Jesus to grow inside of Mary instead of kill him. Through this dialogue, it is heavily implied that Clay had pressured Blaberta to abort Shapey during their pregnancy with him. There is some truth to this phenomenon, as men of high status can find access to safe abortion procedures in a pro-life culture when they don't want a child born. But if it had been Blaberta herself who didn't want Shapey and Clay felt the opposite, it would not have been within her power to seek it out. Luckily for Shapey, Clay could not convince her to go through with it.
Spinsterhood versus bachelorhood. A single woman is a spinster. She is an outcast from society. The Aloneford is run down and decrepit, showing how little Moralton cares for its unmarried women. It disgraces them, whether they are divorced or simply never married. And despite spinster being a term to reflect an older woman beyond the prime age of marriage, we even see young women like Bendy living there. Ergo, a woman's purpose is to marry. A single man is a bachelor. He is desirable. The Bachelor's Arms is an extravagant and new building. It puts the single men on a pedestal that they can leave at their leisure. Friendship is not a thing in Moralton. A friend to all is a friend to none. The competitive, paranoid nature of guarding the nuclear family in Moralton is the result of placing God over all else. Second to him is the institute of marriage. An extension of that is the couple's children. Friends barely factor into this equation, only being relevant when socializing to show off how well they can practice the act of being a family. The family is there to glorify God and produce more Christians. It is integral that it needs to exist to perpetuate the religion. This is what we see in organizations that purport to focus on the family. Because of this, all social interactions are to be in service of building the family. Men compete with men for women, women compete with women for men, and when you don't fit into that paradigm, you are a non-person.
The women in Censordoll's company are not friends. They weren't a support structure. They were just women of the same age trying to reach the role expected of them. After their marriage, we never see any of these women interact again in the series. The women are meant to compete against each other in more ways than one. Censordoll weaponizes Millie against Blaberta when she cannot come up with a slogan, telling Millie she will make her husband very happy and that someone Blaberta won't. Censordoll is aware that Millie's abilities are lacking, but she is putting a facade on to praise her to make Blaberta feel bad, thus spurring competition between them. The Lord's Prayer is a great example of two families exhibiting homogeneity in an attempt to conform and in effect compete with each other. The more similar they are, the more their differences are compared by merit.
Dottie and Florence have a relationship formed out of necessity and proximity, one which Dottie is mostly the one benefiting from. When they first meet, Florence mentions that there must be a lot of competition in her husband's business. Dottie repeats the sentiment, her eyes darting around like a predator, looking around its territory for competitors. Rod comes to the apartment she shares with Florence, and Dottie goes out of her way to change out of her footy pajamas into negligee. Notably, the only time she allows herself to be vulnerable and comfortable is in front of a woman she does not see as competition. Yet, in Sundays, Dottie waits until Florence expresses happiness at Putty's presence to interact with him, as though she needs to convince Florence and herself. Despite constantly putting Florence down, Dottie believed that what they had was friendship. When Florence finally tells her that the two of them aren't friends, she breaks down into tears. Her excitement over the Reverend shouting her name wanes as she hears Florence crying in her room. We see Dottie during the Hope sermon with the rest, her face a mask of guilt.
If a woman marries a man, she is expected to quit her job. If she doesn't, and makes more than him, she is emasculating him. Miss Sculptham and Miss Stoopdown are teachers. Miss Second Opinionson is an administrative assistant, and Bendy is a nurse. Dolly and Stephanie are the only single women in Moralton who own their own businesses, a bar and a sex shop respectively. which are adult-aligned and are not in service of caring for others' children. In doing so, they are branding themselves as nonconformists and may be seen as deviant. Dolly's position as the resident bar owner in Moralton at Forgetty's makes her very accessible to the male patrons for complaints and daily troubles. In this position, she brings comfort to them by serving their drinks, which makes her a figure of some influence and respect in Moralton. She's a mother, girlfriend, and therapist all in one. Whereas Stephanie, running a sinful shop that has several taxes levied on it for immoral goods, is considered a pariah in Moralton, and while she may be well known in their circles for her nonconformity, she is not necessarily welcomed. Dolly is the acceptable indulgence, Stephanie is the taboo.
That is true, I can tell by the look in your eyes.
The quote, and I wanted to put it in the title. It's been going around on social media. I forget Funky Frogbait's like name. I'll just call them Funky. And they go by they them pronouns. I don't know if the quote is their original. I believe it is because I've not seen anyone credit anyone else. But I
feel
just
like
thought
I've seen
that
this quote in a lot of places, though.
yeah, people have been really. It's connected with a lot of people because we talk a lot about nowadays about like girl power and that women can do anything that men can do, and it's obvious because we're all human beings. But I think putting it in the frame of people that are household names all around the world really makes it click with people. And something that I thought that really resonated with me is that Mozart had a sister in real life. And I believe even he was, don't quote me on this is just from my recollection of memory, that he also was aware of her talents because she was a prodigy as well, and he in letters praised her and stuff like that. But their family didn't allow her to tour like he was, and she had to completely stop playing the piano when she got married. And
I think somebody wrote an essay called Shakespeare's Sister once, which is kind of similar to that effect. There's like that question of like if women can make great art and are capable of doing all this, where are all the women artists, where are all the great women musicians, where are all the great women writers? Well, they're bent over stoves.
Exactly. I've heard people say that so many times. Like, where are the, like you just said, where are the women Einsteins? Where are the women Mozarts? And it's like they weren't allowed to explore their talent. Like, we were lucky for very lucky for the fact that Mozart's sister even got to touch a piano, or that Einstein's wife got to do mathematics and things like that, like him. Because a lot of people theorize that I don't know if it was how true this is, so I don't want to like make any specific claims, but either that she had a very large part in his research, or that he took some of the research from her. But we were very lucky that those women were in a privileged position to do those things. There are some women who could be our generation's greatest chemist or greatest trumpet player, but because of the situation of their lives, they will never even get to touch an instrument.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, even in cases where like women actually do get to, participate in whatever field they're interested in, they often don't get credited or remembered.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like a good example is like Rosalind Franklin, who was pivotal in like understanding like DNA, RNA. She was brilliant, but she didn't get the same credit as her male colleagues. Like, she's pretty much unrecognized for the work she did.
Her two male colleagues' names were slapped on the research, and she was completely erased from it.
Yeah, they got the Nobel Prize.
That is insane. I had no idea about the Nobel Prize aspect. And
yeah, so
go ahead first.
Oh, yeah, so like just like whether or not women actually get to, enter the workforce and explore their passions, or they're stuck in the home. It's like there's just women don't often, like especially historically, get to be recognized for the talents they have.
Exactly, because like when you think of You know, people say, "Oh, a woman's place is in the kitchen," but then they say a chef, and the average person would automatically assume that they're talking about a man. So it's like women have certain predefined roles, but the moment that there's recognition and praise involved and some kind of glory, then that immediately becomes a man's role.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even if women do go out and you know show their brilliance and do the same things that men are doing, like professionally they don't get the recognition. Professionally there's like always going to be the bro situation of prioritizing other men, you know, your bros over women.
Yeah.
I was telling you guys about the documentary that I saw, Chasing Amy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know, for context, it's like it's a film where a straight guy falls in love with a lesbian, where a lot of the problems could have been solved if they just used the word bisexual. But like, you know, the way it was framed, because it was made in the 90s, it was based on their friendship with another filmmaker who was a lesbian, who did make a film called Go Fish that came out like a little bit before Kevin Smith's film Clerks, which was the one that, you know, he made before he made Chasing Amy. I'm not a fan of his work, but like there, because you know, Clerks and Go Fish were very similar films aesthetically, you know, pacing wise. They say that Go Fish was the lesbian Clerks, even though it came out before Clerks.
Which is another good point. Of course, the female-oriented film, it comes first, but it's called the female so and so.
Yeah. But like then Kevin Smith, he, you know, notices one scene from Go Fish that he decided to make an entire movie about. And that's the movie that goes viral and, you know, gets all this praise and gets, you know, everybody watched it. Everybody knew about it, but nobody knew about Go Fish because it didn't get the backing that Kevin Smith's film was getting.
I wonder with the of course this applies to the labeling characters as lesbians as well, but I wonder if there's like this thing, like in these kinds of movies, against labeling a female character as bisexual, or just labeling characters as bisexual or gay or lesbian in general, because there's like but especially when it comes to female characters, there's like an implicit choice in that, like people don't like the idea of a woman freely having options and not being,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I don't, of course it's not like restrictive to be of another sexuality. It's just if you're putting yourself in the mindset of somebody who's like misogynistic.
Yeah, the idea being that why don't I get to decide your sexuality for you?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And of course, I being the perspective of the heterosexual guy.
Yeah.
And with I mentioned before, there's a lot of talk about, you know, like girl power and stuff, but there has been a pivot in that recently in pop culture. I think especially with the way that the economy is going currently, people are really yearning, women especially are yearning and attracted to a promised time that in the past doesn't exist. For context, before I say this, people always say, you know, in the 50s, you could support a family on one income. The wife didn't have to work. You know, you women were stupid for wanting the right to vote and have your own bank accounts and this and that, because now you don't have to work. Women have always worked from the dawn of time. Women, since the cavemen times, women also hunted and also gathered. Wealthy women did not have to work. First off.
And like, you know, as you were saying, like recently we've seen this shift. Often when, you know, just speaking for the United States, and you know, this is in other countries as well, but we'll just talk about here because we're all from the U.S. Moral Oral takes place in the U.S. So we'll just talk about here for now. Like when politics move right, the culture tends to move right as well, and vice versa. Like it's a shift we see happening all together. And, you know, and as I think there was this dissatisfaction during the Biden administration that was growing, and people were trying to find solutions. And unfortunately, a lot of people turned towards alt-right politics or trad culture or things that are more conservative, more traditional. And a lot of people were saying, like, I can't believe that Trump won in November. And it's like, well, I feel like there were a lot of signs, and there's been a lot of cultural kind of like analysis about this, of all the signs that were there that we were moving in a conservative direction as a country, with the rise in tradwives on TikTok, and kind of like the popularity of all these alt-right influencers, and just like the kind of general more conservative attitude of like Gen Z, and that shift we're seeing. And so it's kind of like not surprising, and that he got elected, and now we're seeing this absolutely horrible like Project 2025 agenda being played out, and all this conservative far right rhetoric and like Christian like fascist rhetoric, and it's we're seeing so much of it just gets more and more extreme. And it's like there are signs in the culture and politics, they all play into each other and show where we are as a country.
Part of it, I think, is that what allows the false idea to perpetrate our society is that they don't believe that what women do in the household is work. Domestic labor is not labor to them. The emotional labor that women go through of having to be the ones to remember the kids' shoe sizes, their allergies so the kid stays alive, worrying about their family's birthdays and their husband's birthdays, worrying about this and that and this. The emotional labor also that women go through, none of this is considered work. So they can go out there and say, if you will vote for Trump and you will vote for the Republican Party, you will not have to work. You can stay home, which is a good segue into the TikTok stuff, because one of the most famous examples, Nara Smith, she's from an evangelical religion. She's a Mormon woman, and people don't acknowledge that she is incredibly wealthy. She and her husband combined are both models. They have more wealth than most of us will even see in our life. So she posts these videos saying, my husband and kids were craving like pizza rolls today, so I decided to make them from scratch, with the health and raw milk pipeline to alt-right pipeline kind of thing going on.
Wait, that woman's not satire?
No,
she's not.
No, she's real.
I've literally only ever seen her videos in passing. I did not realize that it was not satire. It feels like satire. Like
it
that
does feel like satire.
That is how fucking stupid it is.
Because there's like this, if you watch
I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way.
No, it's okay. No, that's a good point. If you watch the videos, she's always like she's a model, and she carries herself like one of those videos because she is advertising a tradwife lifestyle. It's an advertisement, it's an ad. People don't realize that she can do these recipes from scratch with raw milk that would take the average person an entire day to do, because she has staff watching her children.
Yeah.
But the viewer doesn't see that.
Yes,
so
exactly.
To the viewer, she's advertising this attainable lifestyle that you can have too if you just follow her example. And it's a dangerous like pipeline to get into. And I've also on TikTok, like there's also along with the rise in like these tradwives, we also see like these ex-tradwives talking about how hard it was to get out of that situation and how difficult their life is now because they don't have any financial security for themselves. They've never had any. Sorry, Lottie's going insane down there. They don't have any financial independence. They don't have any kind of they don't have any financial independence. They don't have any kind of like security. Like they've never really worked like even the most entry level like basic jobs before, like not even like retail or as like a server or anything that like it only requires like a high school degree. Like they've never done any of this, so they don't have that security. And I think that's like a really important side of it for people to be seeing, but it's unfortunately not as popular as the more like aesthetic, like nice to watch, like Nara Smith type content.
I forget.
I've heard the term "lady of leisure" used before. And like supposedly that's code for tradwife, but like
Interesting.
a wealthy tradwife because she doesn't actually have to be doing housework.
Yeah, she can have the farm and have the cottage and make bread if she wants to, but she has people to take care of this land for her. Like, there's this famous picture that goes. I'll find it in post. We can put it up on the screen where it's like, me and my wife are gonna go on our land and make our own farm, and there's room for like one cow in the fucking backyard. These people have no realistic understanding of what actually being self-sufficient is. I forget who said it, but it's one of those things that goes around where if you give a man sole power to feed you, you give him sole power to starve you.
Yeah, it's just such a dangerous lifestyle to promote in that way. Like, obviously there are lots of women that are housewives, stay-at-home moms, and they're okay. Like, there's like a spectrum there. Like, we're talking about like the really like dramatic like tradwife, like, I serve my husband, I have nothing in my life but my husband and my kids. Like, that's what we're talking about. Also, like, it makes me think of like a few years ago, the stay-at-home girlfriend trend was like a big thing. And I remember when that was happening, I was like saying to anyone who would listen, I was like, this is so horrible and insane. And like, like seeing this is like these women should like not be in these situations. Like, they need to get out. And like, people would be like, you're taking it too seriously. And I was like, no, like, this is like really like concerning. And like, now like we're seeing kind of like the more like, we're seeing like the cultural shift towards like, it's become like more prevalent in the culture, and like, it wasn't quite as big then. It was just more of like it was like just kind of like a trend on TikTok, but now it's like a bigger thing in the culture. And I'm like, see, this is why it was a problem.
I feel it's like one of those things where you can't like in a way it's also that some progressive language is also used to sort of couch it, because like, it's one thing that I always give a side eye, because obviously you don't have to get married to like be in a good healthy relationship. It's not everyone's goal to get married, but as a feminist and somebody who logically understands the way that the law functions and the way that divorces function and stuff like that, when I see people talking about like, making jokes like they're taking a video of their baby like the baby is talking. It's like, they're taking a video of their baby like the baby is talking. It's like, mommy, why don't I have daddy's last name? Why do I have daddy's last name but you don't? And then they do a joke clip about like, because your daddy's a pussy. That's not funny. That's not funny to me. I think it's crazy that you're being trapped and by a man who thinks that marriage and legally tying himself to you and giving him that legal responsibility is more commitment than making an entire human being.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's hard to criticize that without sounding like a Republican, because it's not like, oh, you had a baby out of wedlock. I don't care about that.
Also, sorry, like, we like have been on so many tangents. I also wanted to circle back to what you said about like the like women doing housework and that not being seen as like a valid form of work. Like there's like there's this thing called the second shift that's been studied. It's like, and this is for women who also have jobs, and it's like, they go and do their day job, but then they come home in the evening and they do all of the housework and all of the things that like housewives or stay-at-home moms are doing, and they're doing that on top of the regular job, but it's still not seen as like valid work. So it's like they're putting in the second shift that goes unrecognized, and like they're exhausted and dissatisfied. And this isn't quite so relevant for really the women in Moral Oral, because the majority of them are stay-at-home moms, and the ones that do work don't have kids really.
I think the only exception would be Mrs. Second Opinion Sin, and she's caring for her little boy and a grown man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She would be the best example of that. But it's like, it's not seen as like a valid form of work. So it's like you've got women who do that as like their entire life, and it's not seen as valid. And some women like go and they're working all day, and then they come home and do that and do all the things their husband won't do. And it's just like we're really just getting out all of our frustrations and anger about like
I mean, that's kind of its own problem because, like, I mean, if it's an agreement between a husband and wife, okay, that's one thing. But like, can the guy do something when he gets home,
Yeah,
or
like,
is he just gonna go watch football?
No, see
There's-
that's the thing. It's like he sits down, watches football, has a beer or whatever, and then the wife is like taking care of the baby or doing the
Yeah.
dishes or making dinner, and it's
Yeah,
it's like,
that's-
like this completely uneven distribution of housework.
Yeah, and that's like, yeah, that's just fundamentally against the mother.
And to start getting into a little bit of the women in Moralton specifically, we couldn't find this. This is more in headcanon territory, but there are, with multiple women in Moralton, we get like subtle hints from their body language, the way some actions that they take, that they are very intelligent, but there's never like a chance for this to be explored. Senna, would you like to start us off with Dolores?
I mean, how much do you really want me to say about this? Because a lot of that. How can I go about this? Like, can I say that I think that she's like a restrained intellectual?
Yeah.
No, I think I could totally see her that way.
Because the way that I read it, when the seed was planted in my head to think that Miss Stoopdown is like I call her like a converted nerd. That's like how I refer to her. But basically, like, especially during Oral's little weirdo ableist speech that he was having, you see all of the teachers and they all look really sad and like pitiful, but specifically Miss Stoopdown has like this little like little tiny quirk of a smile, and it just made me think, oh well, what if in some weird backwards way she's like resonating with this, you know, in some way.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just feel like to myself, the way that she kind of grew in my head is that I just feel like she's so over the top with how one, she's condescending because she's speaking to these children like they're stupid. But I don't know, you know, she takes a lot of breaks. I think it's fake. I think she's pretending to be a little bit ditzy. I think that
let them so that they have access to the books.
I think that the books, she's aware that that stuff's in there, in my opinion, and she's just like taking breaks all the time so she doesn't have to watch them, because when she was a kid, she would have liked if she was able to pursue that stuff. And she's a girl, so that's a whole nother thing, but, you know, different matter compared to just, you know, pursuing intellectuality at all in Moralton. But
plus, like in a town like Moralton where everyone is Christian, you can't debate that. You can't have any sort of opinion that goes against the grain. There's bound to be like a handful of people who are just closet atheists.
I also want to say it's possible she's not an atheist, but she's also not buying into the like very extreme fundamentalist version of Christianity. She could, you know, be a Christian, but also she, you know, believes in science and evolution.
Well, like agnostic.
There's a difference between, just real quick, because there's a difference between agnostic and, which is like where your belief is that you just can't decide one way or other if there's a God, like you don't know, and that's your idea. She could be, which this is the label I personally use, a theistic evolutionist, where you do believe in God and you do practice religion, but you believe that evolution also took place.
Oh,
so one is more definitive than the other.
Gotcha. One other thing I did want to mention, just kind of things that make me think about the way that I view Dolores. I know that we're supposed to see like her name, like Miss Stoopdown, as she's stooping down to be like, you know, like condescending towards the children, but you could also view it as her stooping down to the standards of Moralton and like the intellectual level of what she's expected to be at. That's all I'm gonna say. Crackpot theories aside.
Well, and it's the talk of atheism is a good segue to Agnes, I think.
Yeah, because you know, considering the episodes where she does get like a little bit of we're seeing a bit more of her than usual. You know, when we see what was it called, Holy Visage, when she takes the kids over to the Believe It or Else museum, there's a line she has in there about the skeleton of the baby Jesus.
And the skeleton of baby Jesus, and the way she says it, it's just like it's hard to put
it or else. She knows she's bullshitting.
Exactly, because of course there's like a monotoneness to everything else that she says, but in that scene specifically, it's like just there's such a extended level of roboticism to it that like she's just not invested in it whatsoever. And also in Geniuses, the way that I forget exactly what Oral asks her to prompt her to say this.
She says something like he looks like, and then she has to stop herself from talking about him
Yes!
as like the missing link because I think she thinks if she's gonna talk about it, people are gonna like jump on her for it.
Because people talk about Darwin in the show, but as like this mythic, like cryptid figure. But the missing link, I feel like, is a little bit more of an advanced concept for someone who is starting from base zero, of where you believe that Darwin isn't even real. I feel like the missing link is a little bit more of an advanced concept.
Yeah,
and it implies that she is
they
aware of that.
Weren't they telling spooky stories at the camp about the missing link?
No, well, what they were saying, the camp story was called "The Lies of Charles Darwin."
Okay, for some reason I thought they said he looks like the guy from the story, which was the missing link.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's impossible that they treat it as like a boogeyman scenario, but it could be either or. Go to sleep or else go to sleep or else the missing link will be your sleep paralysis demon.
Her line is he clearly doesn't believe in geniuses, which is like a euphemism for intelligent design. So
which is such an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
She's thought about more than that. Seemingly.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on Agnes you want to explore before I pull out my Glam's Pepe Sylvia board?
Get your soapbox, Glam.
Go on.
Okay, so my thing, the third woman that we wanted to discuss that seems a little bit more intelligent than people like often discuss or give her credit for is Florence, because when she's people revolve her character a lot around, as we mentioned in the script, around Reverend Putty for obvious reasons, of course. Their arcs are intertwined. But I don't think people often pay attention to the things that calls his sermon controversial and says that the faith that he shows is contemptuous, and she calls his words plaintive. This is not only the vocabulary of somebody who is, I would say, decently well read, but it also shows a level of sort of like emotional literacy that isn't very often explored in Moralton, because Rod, I call him Pod. Rod complains a lot about his station in life and how he feels like underappreciated and that nobody wants him, blah blah. And I feel like most of the town can understand that he kind of hates his job and he's a little bit of a dick about it. But the way that Florence describes it, she gets intimately what he's trying to communicate. And I just feel like it's an underrated aspect of her character, because I feel like she communicates very eloquently, which you see more of because her arc is about her slowly learning to stand up for herself. It's hard to put into words, but if you also look at it alongside the fact that how fat women are just taking up space, stuff like that, using big words in like that and emotionally intimate concepts in it would probably be seen as insulting to the people around you, especially when you're encouraged a woman especially is encouraged to to stoop herself down. And I feel like people don't really like read into it, because if you're not using context clues with the things that she says, you would think that she's describing him as like a fire and brimstone kind of preacher, that she's just saying that he's passionate, but she's not. If you Google all these words, she's saying that she says straight up that he fights God, which is not from what I understand, not usually a Christian concept.
She's also just really horny for him.
Yeah, I do think that the dialogue she's using, it's very it's giving, I read a lot of very eloquent, spicy novels.
Well, that's kind of where I don't doubt she's like decently well read, because clearly she has a good vocabulary, but also I think she's just reading a lot of smut.
That's the impression I was getting.
And I think that's another thing, is that in pop culture, smut is often considered something that's for lonely housewives. But with the kinds of things that we're interested in reading, some of us would know, better than anyone else, that smut and intelligence and depth of emotions are not like mutually exclusive from one another. But because it's a genre that's often associated with female desire, it's what's the word? It's seen as lesser and not as important. Which is interesting because often when you think of pornographic material, you would think of men, but smutty romance literature specifically is associated with women.
Glam, speak for yourself, okay?
Well, no, because
What do you mean?
No,
when
I mean,
I said like the kind of things that we're interested in, I mean like the like queer literature and like
Okay, yeah. queer
Clive
literature.
Barker and stuff like that.
Okay, but I'm not reading the friggin' Chuck
No, that's not what I
stuff.
mean. I mean that because we read those things, we can understand that it in another form has merit.
Okay.
Like I definitely think like women get judged too harshly for what they read, and like those kinds of like romance novels, like smutty romance novels, are very popular among women, and like that's fine, you know, read what you want. However, if you read Colleen Hoover, I am judging you.
Yeah. And of course the thing with the motorcycle is right out of one of those books. So I think I think our theories sort of are they meld together, they coexist. Wes or Ellie, do you want to take on this next point?
Oh yeah. Did Clay try to get Shapey aborted? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Y'all are crazy for this one.
He tried to kill that motherfucker.
Listen, he did not want that baby. He sends Oral away for the time Bluebird is pregnant. We don't know exactly what's going on between Clay and Bluebird at this time, but like the theory that Wes and I have going here is that he spent a lot of time trying to convince her to abort the baby, and then also just like doing things that like might lead to a miscarriage. Not like hurting her or anything, but being like, "Hey, do you want this drink?
Oh, God.
Do you want a cigarette?"
I don't think she does that shit, but
She wouldn't agree to it, of course, but he's
Yeah.
like gently nudging her towards activities
yeah,
that
that's
could
fucked
kill
up.
a fetus.
I will be meeting him out back behind Forgetties for that one.
Like, hey, you want to walk home from the grocery store carrying a bunch of stuff, huh?
Oh no, he doesn't ask her. We see how he treats her. He said, "You're walking home with the baby, bitch." He probably just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was hoping
he's
that
not
she would, like,
asking.
accidentally drop him in like a storm drain or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't.
He remembers what Angela said to him about not being able to choke down a highball or get on a train. He's like, Roberta, we're going to an amusement park.
Yeah.
You're getting on the Matterhorn, bitch.
Yeah, I don't think it's a choice of the matter thing. Like, we see him demand shit at her a couple times,
But
so.
clearly all of the attempts didn't work.
For them.
Nothing could kill that thing.
He's like Invinso fetus.
I mean,
You got those stop brain genes.
Roberta delivered it. I don't know if we. I guess this would also be a great time to bring up Sleeper Build Roberta because she delivered that fucking baby herself. That is hard.
Okay, but
childbirth
like,
in general is a feat of strength.
There's there's like this idea that when they outlaw abortion, what really happens is that they're outlawing abortion for people who can't afford it. People
and they're not getting rid of abortion, they're getting rid of like safe abortion.
Abortion. But like men who have positions of power and are able to can get abortions for their wives or their mistresses.
Absolutely.
This is a thing. Like,
I mean, yeah, how do you think these guys with these mistresses cover up their babies?
I know. I don't. I think I told you guys I was watching this TikTok about this debate. A woman was debating abortion with a man, and she said, she brought up the exceptions for minors and for rape, and he said in both those cases, no, the abortion should still not be allowed. And when she said, what if you got another woman pregnant while you were married? Dead fucking silence from this man.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past certain men.
And, yeah, exactly. In the script, we mentioned that, Agnes realizes that she has no choice but to keep the other baby once Dr. Pottersville takes note of it. And that's another thing that's in modern times of how more things are being put in laws and, things in our applications are being put into place to keep a better track on women's fertile cycles and their periods and things like that.
Really bad now. They can cyber track whether you're menstruating or not.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I
Like
believe
those
isn't it?
period tracker apps, they can
Mhm.
track when your period is happening.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
I forget if it went through or not, but there was one state that was trying to put a law into place where if you were pregnant, you can't leave state lines.
Yeah,
What, is a baby contraband?
Babies are contraband now.
Try getting through TSA with that baby in your tummy.
Well, because their whole thing is like, oh, you're leaving state to get an abortion somewhere where it's legal.
Oh, that's fucked up. Why would they assume that?
I don't know how else to cut this. But speaking of dead children,
what?
The next one is about Angela. I don't know how else to bring it up.
Okay, speaking of dead babies, how Angela's upbringing affected Clay.
I had this was something that I brought up actually. So this kind of stemmed from a point of, me thinking about Gilberta and how she's not active in raising her sons, because really we don't see a lot of women in Moralton actively raising their sons. That's something that they would do to their daughters, but there are only in the show that we see 2 specific situations where a son is being primarily raised by like a mother. I would say the mother is the more active of the 2 parents in the household / the raising, and that would be ironically enough in Clay and Gilberta's family households. So with Angela and Clay, we see that the way that she raises him, she's not really, and I'm going by a short amount of time on screen, but she's not teaching him, lessons. And we do see Arthur's kind of doing that, but, Angela is with him the majority of the time. So we're seeing Angela placating him, being like, oh, let's go look at pictures of you, blah, blah, blah. She's doing very motherly, like, sweet. She's giving him emotional support in a way. I mean, she's really using him as like an emotional battery, but that aside, she's doing more feminine types of things with him, like more traditionally feminine in the household. He's probably with her while she's cooking, he's probably helping mommy with dinner. He's doing all these things around the house with her, but and there is a specific way in how that affected him growing up, barring beside what maybe he may have been interested in himself. It did affect him growing up because he wasn't given, I guess, discipline, but that's not really a mother's place to discipline a little baby boy, now is it? In Moralton, at least. I know I might have went a little bit long with that, but feel free to say whatever, pops into y'all's head about this.
Freud has entered the chat. Sorry, cut that. That was the wrong accent.
Canceling you.
But, like, Angela raising Clay, he wasn't fathered.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
but more so the point of this like bullet point was like how having a mother be the main guiding force for a young boy can affect them differently growing up. He's a lot more like femininely in tune with like certain things. He's more emotional, stuff like that, which you don't typically see with most of the men in Moralton. But at the same time, he's painfully unstable because he was coddled. So that's kind of like, I feel like if a lot of mothers were going around raising their kids in Moralton, it might not be as extreme as Angela, but it would be, a similar type of situation.
With Clay, I think part of what he does is like he overcompensates for, him having these more like feminine tendencies that he got from, having such a close bond with his mother. Like we see him overcompensating for that a lot.
It's putting on the caricature of masculinity.
Yeah. So like I think Clay has complicated feelings about, probably the skill set he got from Angela, which is probably like cooking and cleaning and doing all these things with mommy.
That it's notable that like when Clay first meets Gilberta and Help, he's saying that he wants to be a homebody. He wants to stay at home and read the Bible. And supposedly someone who stays home all day is also doing the housework.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, and it seems like Angela was just kind of someone that stayed home all day and read the Bible when
exactly.
I was a kid. So he's really like, I'm gonna be just like my mom.
Yeah.
I have a thought, but it's less about Clay and more about Angela herself. It's not just like she's a woman and I support women's wrongs. It's that like I can't help but I really can't help but sympathize for her because as we've mentioned, I forget if we brought this up in an actual video before, if it's just something we've talked about amongst ourselves. But timeline wise, for when Clay would have been a child, she had no idea of knowing that the things that she was doing were killing her children, and causing her grief. And a miscarriage and a pregnancy puts so much strain on you mentally, physically, and emotionally. On top of the fact that, imagine how it feels to be raised in a society where producing a child is the only thing you are born for, and no matter how hard you try, you can't do it. What that does to a person, and then you finally get what you. It parallels a little bit of what Clay mentions in the sacrifice rant about how getting a woman is seen as the ultimate goal for a man, and for Angela, she fulfilled her ultimate goal, and she did anything and everything that she could to keep it, neglecting. She neglected, in her wifely duties, she's kind of neglected Arthur emotionally, but having a good, healthy relationship with Arthur also benefited her. She was neglecting her own emotions as well.
Yeah, and we also see like that how having a baby is like kind of the equivalent of like in Clay Sacrifice Rant, like you gotta like find a woman and like you gotta keep it at all costs, and like so for like women it's like getting the baby, and like we see that with other characters as well. It's like she's not a very significant character, but like Millie Fakey is, she hasn't had a baby with her husband, and like that's a whole thing when like he throws her out. He's like, I was going to give you a baby, and like he obviously wasn't going to, but like it's like kind of like a control thing over her. It's like cuz she's got to have the baby, and like we see how excited Bloberta is when she finds out she's pregnant with Shapey. Like that's like a big a big thing for her. She's really excited to be having that baby. So it's like we see that with like a lot of the female characters, and also even with Bendy, who had a baby at such a young age, like as a result of rape. It's like she's so affected by not being able to be in Joe's life. Like she's always calling Miss Second Opinions in for updates, and she's using Sunny Bear to kind of cope with the fact that she can't see Joe or talk to him or be present with him. And so it's like babies are such a significant part of these women's lives, because it's what they've always been taught, like being a mother is like the most important thing you'll ever do.
Interestingly enough, I remember seeing somebody point this out before. In Dumb, I believe it is, when her and Joe are talking, for a second she answers him as though like she doesn't believe that she's his mother. But I don't think this is like a retcon or like a loophole in the writing. I think it's just that mentally, because she regresses and disassociates, that her mind is not like in that moment letting her believe that she's finally getting to talk to Joe for what might be the first time in like an intimate context, and not just being there when he's getting a checkup from the doctor or for some other reason, or seeing him at school.
Well, her reasoning was that she never even hit him, so she's never been present as a mother figure, so she can't be his mother.
Yes, exactly. It's not that she doesn't believe that she's physically his mother, but it's almost like, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about is the body type disparity in Moralton. It's easy to say like, they didn't have that big of a budget, blah blah, but I think that there's much more thought put into the body types of obviously much more thought put into the different body types of the women in Moralton than you might think. Like the fact that a majority of the town is kind of that Barbie, small waist, curvy build is intentional, because of course that's what they would be expected to be. But there is a few exceptions, but I do want to start talking about Bendy, because she's like the woman in town who's, you might say that she's like considered like one of the most, if not the most beautiful woman in town. She's constantly, we see multiple different men desiring her, and talking about like Putty, you know, he's like he's of course excited to talk about women and sex in general, but he's especially excited when he learns that Fakey gives him material to fantasize about with her. And something that I think is interesting, if we compare Bendy, who is seen as the most desirable woman in town, to Florence, who is considered the least desirable woman in town, I don't think I need to to back that up. I think you get it. People often compare Florence to Dottie because that's who she's, you know, it's who her arc is with. But I think that Bendy and Florence are like two sides of. We see Bendy just starting to do this, sort of, as, you know, she gets closer to having a relationship with Joe, and Florence is more in the middle of this arc. We see her do it a lot. But, you know, Bendy, despite being so young, I would say consistently makes at least an effort to stand up to herself. She voices her opinions, even if she's kind of just going along with what the men around her want, but no one listens to her. Bendy's conventionally attractive and everyone's eyes are on her, but no one sees her for who she is. And then we have Florence, who she exists in a body that's seen as a moral failure by society at large. But like, no matter how much they say they don't want to see her, how much they're disgusted by her, they'll gawk at her any chance they get. So like both of these women, they can't escape the eyes of society. But because Florence is undesirable, she's ultimately invisible.
Yeah, and like I think it's interesting that, you know, despite like Bendy and these other women having like, you know, quote unquote, like the perfect body, you know, like thin, tiny waist, big boobs, like she's not listened to, and I think it kind of speaks to like she's not a person, like she's an object to the men. It's like she just exists for to them, just like to look nice, to be something they can fantasize about or sleep with, you know, depending on who they are. Like she's just an object to them. They don't care what she has to say. Like if anything, like her speaking ruins it for them.
Yeah, you could almost say that like when it comes to like voicing her opinions and speaking her mind, Florence is at slightly like an advantage, because we do see that, like, you know, when she talks to people, they're sort of disgusted by the fact that she would want to talk to them, but it's like she almost has nothing else to lose at that point, so she might as well speak her mind.
Yeah, it's like she's already held in such low regard that whatever she says, she can't make it worse.
Yeah, and I mean, we see in Sacrifice that it's like people don't even bat an eye at saying absolutely horrendous things about her.
Yeah, like Roger's the only one to get upset about people insulting her, and that's because he loves her.
Exactly. Something that, you know, oftentimes in real life, there's like the whole conversation with like fatphobia, skinny privileges, and that, but people kind of neglect the middle ground, especially of the mid-size is a little bit of a difficult term, because if you look at when Moral Oral came out, the early 2000s, there I forget when that film Bridget Jones's Diary came out, but there's 1,000 other examples.
It was the early 2000s, and like she gets so much flack in that film for supposedly being fat when she's very average.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, like, if I look back on our chat right now, I think there's a picture of her, and her stomach is like flat. She's like a little bit wide, but she doesn't even have like a stomach.
Yeah, and really that was like the attitude from like I would say like the late 90s through even like the early 2010s. Cause like I saw a tweet the other day where it was a picture of Lena Dunham in Girls. And like someone was like, this was considered comically fat back in 2012.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like someone who's got like a very average body.
That's why the term midsize is very difficult to define, because skinny and obese don't even have really like the definition shifts with the culture. But I think in Moral Oral we have Agnes and we have Stephanie as two examples of what I would call midsize.
Yeah, and I think with Agnes, it's interesting because like I've always wondered like how much of her physique is like supposed to be like her being pregnant, or is that just like her body type?
We didn't know she was still pregnant when it was in the episode, so I've always kind of read it as her body type.
Yeah, me
and
too.
that she was like still really early in the pregnancy.
And I think Agnes being like, because I think in her in the family tree picture, her face is still like a little bit like wide, and I forget how much we can see of her body in the picture.
Oh
But
yeah, I
I think
think
it's
she's
very
definitely
important.
mid-size. I just meant like specifically like her stomach.
No, yeah, you'll see where I'm going with this. I think that she's like always been mid-sized and chubby, is what I'm saying, even like from childhood. I think that it's very important that they made because we have Bendy, who is a rape victim, who is very conventionally attractive, but we also have Agnes, because something that men continue to say to this day, aside from the sea of what were you wearing, it's like they insult a common insult, especially on the internet. You don't have to worry about it. Nobody would ever rape you. You're fat.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And with Stephanie being mid-sized, of course, it has to do in general with how she doesn't care about whatsoever about any of Moralton's social conventions or what they expect of her, of what she should look like. And it's like there's a thing there with like there's like a stereotype usually that butches are fat. Is that true? I've heard that.
It is a stereotype. With a character like Stephanie, she's noticeably like she's wider than the other female characters. There's a lot of like baby fat in her face, which is something you never really get rid of. And you know, there's also like aspects of her that look a little built, like maybe she works out or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think when we see her arms, it has a little bit of the similar shape of that Danielle has, where they kind of like they emphasize the bump. There's like
The
a divot
bicep.
on between her. Yeah.
I get the impression that like she's someone who works out but still is like overweight, which is a lot of people. Like sometimes you just don't lose weight even if you do work out.
You know, with like a lot of the women having this sort of Barbie like body. You know, in the episode Presents for God, we see these sex workers, and all of them have like very, very like thin bodies. Like I would say even like a slightly like more exaggerated version of what a lot of women in Moralton have.
It's
like
also that they seem younger.
They do, yeah. They have, and they also wear a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see these sex workers and they're like big boobs, very thin, lots of makeup, hair done up, like really like stylistically, like aesthetically, like different from what we see the women in Moralton doing. Like they wear very like very like revealing clothing. Like so obviously that's gonna catch the attention of a lot of these men who are sexually repressed in a lot of ways.
Generally, we kind of agree that the episode was poorly handled and kind of stupidly written.
But it does like with like these like little things. It does have like there are things that we can take from it. Like we could discuss a little bit of the idea of the Madonna whore complex, which I think it explains perfectly how the men in Moralton. I think the closest we see to a Moralton woman having makeup like the sex workers is Millie when she's going out of her way to try to get Norm's attention any way possible.
Yeah,
that and like an early version of Dolly from season 1, but then they kind of got rid of that later.
Yeah. Like and we were talking about how like we see a lot of the men in town you know, going to sleep with these women, and I thought something that was interesting was like you know, we don't know the marital status of a lot of these men, and probably a lot of them are married. But besides Clay, who's kind of like a unique case, the only like one that we know for sure like to have a wife that we've seen is Sal Figurelli, and like he goes and sleeps with a sex worker. So it's like there's, you know, this thing of the men in Moralton constantly pursuing women who they see as like more exciting than their wives.
That's a good bring up. Sal is a good point because we forgot about Mrs. Figurelli. She is also a bigger woman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And in Abstinence, there's a scene.
Oh,
with
so
Sal.
is Sharon. So is Sharon.
Yeah. She has Agnes's model, I believe.
The facial model, I think, but not the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to cut in the middle of that. You go ahead. It just popped in my head.
No, you're right. We forgot about them, and I think there's a sort of another thing there with the foreignness of Mrs. Figurelli and Mrs. Freistine,
Mm.
because it's not just like their skin color or the other things about them aren't just the only thing that makes that their body types factor into a way that they're not also made in the image of God.
Mm.
But another thing with Mrs. and Mr. Figurelli, there's a scene in Abstinence where they're in bed together, and he asks her to move over a little bit, and she says like, she says like, what do I care? And he says that that's the most attracted that he's been to her in a long time. Like when she's not caring and not like asking of anything from him emotionally, which I think is a very big clue to why he would be interested in somebody that he could just pay to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's yeah. I don't even know what to say. I'm just like, yeah.
No, it's for and all the men that do buy, it's a very interesting case because of course with Putty we know why he gets one. I think like one of the things that might catch people off guard a little bit is Roger, but it makes perfect sense. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, he's divorced and sad.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
There's nothing wrong with it. Roger and Dr. Potterswheel are kind of in the same boat where they don't have a female partner anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of covered the people that were married. That's like the rest of them. I mean, to each their own, I guess. Like it's still a weird situation, but you know.
Yeah,
and we see that line of men getting like a shot, like the anti-HIV shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, like, there's a bunch of men in that line, and probably a lot of them are married, but they're just like background characters that we don't really know anything about. But yeah, it's just like this episode, like, I mean, I have a lot of problems with this episode, and I think they could have done a lot more interesting commentary on sex workers.
Definitely.
But they didn't. I think it was overall handled not so great, but they did, however, show that men in Moralton do have this pattern of chasing after more exciting, more desirable women and neglecting their wives.
And if I recall, to explain for people, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the idea with the Madonna whore complex, to put it more simply in layman's terms, is the idea that men struggle to see sexual attraction to their full extent of their desires in a woman that they quote-unquote respect or see more as pure and virtuous, whereas a woman that they do engage with their sexual desires to the fullest extent, they have trouble respecting them and seeing them as virtuous or full people.
Yeah.
Which I guess the best example of that we have would be like Millie Fakey, because in the midst of like Norm going back to Bendy and being like quote unquote guilty about it, he brings up frequently that Millie loves him and that she's beautiful, and he's aware of these things. And he even has like a dream about burning in hell.
Also, was Fakey the only guy who didn't pursue a sex worker in that episode?
I don't know if we see
That's crazy if
honest.
true.
Huh.
I don't know if we see him, but I just assume he was
after his divorce too. Like,
yeah. I mean, maybe now that he didn't have someone to cheat on, it wasn't exciting.
Maybe
some men are like that.
Huh. Wow.
I think that's a lot behind his driving force, is that it's exciting to him.
Yeah.
Because like one of the things
about it
Bendy is that she makes him feel so alive.
Yeah. It's the thrill. It's the thrill. It's, you know, he could it's a you know, it's a horribly kept secret. Everyone's aware it's happening, but to him it's like, oh, I'm going behind people's back and nobody knows what I'm doing, but you know, like
he's literally in the bar making out with her.
Yeah, he ceases to have interest in her the second that it's no longer novel.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he has the option to make an honest woman of her, he's not going to take it.
No. Yeah. And in Help, on the back of his car, he has a bumper sticker that's scratched off his back.
So major theme in Alone was about how victims of sexual assault try to regain control after it's been taken from them.
That's a really good point. I've never seen it framed that way before, but it makes sense, of course, with like Bendy sort of using her coping regression to build a life for herself that was taken from her. Agnes trying to, Agnes choosing her abortion. And of course, a majority of Censordoll's character revolves around a need for control.
With Agnes, it was a lot about trying to recreate the scenario.
Yeah, exactly, which is, it's something that people are ashamed to talk about. That after you go through something like that, sometimes you do end up with fantasies or desires like that seem counterproductive, quote unquote. Even if you haven't, like, any really any sort of desire for having control over your own life can manifest in wanting to take back that control in a sexual nature.
Yeah. With Censordoll, it's like, I always got the sense that she grew up being controlled.
Oh yeah, of course, because somebody that would make that level of decision over their child's body wouldn't stop controlling them after that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a Carrie White situation happening.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's like very on the nose.
Which also like ties into the witchcraft thing.
Maybe that's what they meant. They
Yeah.
I refuse to believe it was voodoo or whatever. I don't think they're that stupid.
It was never never officially named as voodoo? People just like started saying
I
that?
think people assumed it was.
I assumed it was voodoo because there were dolls involved.
Yeah, I think that was
Bruh.
I think that was a case of misinformation being spread. I have never been able to see a sighting where like they stated directly that it was voodoo, but maybe I just don't have that information.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which is like, it's sort of interesting in the sense that, like, in multiple ways through the process of taking back control, Frances violates the control of other people in the process. One of those, if she was to do voodoo, one of those ways being like infiltrating on a closed practice.
The sort of someone who was abused becomes the abuser.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, with her interactions with Oral and some of the kids in town, people always use the word grooming in a sexual nature, but it's not. It's just used a lot in that way. It's not purely a sexual word. You can groom someone into a perfectly non-sexual situation.
You can groom someone into a position of power.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like how she was grooming Clay to be a puppet minister or whatever the hell you want to call it, like a puppet
Mayor.
official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I called him a minister. He's not minister.
Well, into her Republican far right sock puppet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Ellie wants Fran to be grooming the minister.
What? Oh.
Hashtag fraud.
Oh.
We don't usually go into this because everybody always repeats this, but the whole thing of Alone being the nail in the show's coffin, I think this is the one time it would be good to talk about it because of the reason why it was seen as such a shameful thing compared to the rest of what was in the show.
I think for a lot of it, it wasn't necessarily the Nurse Bendy scenes, but was actually the Sculpt Them scenes that really killed it. Because that and tied in with the episode Rape, both of that together, I don't think the Adult Swim executives who were like looking that over were very welcoming of the idea of a theme like consensual non-consent being shown on the channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is the block that comes after Cartoon Network, which is child-friendly programming. So that I think is like where they draw the line.
And of course, like the way that a lot of people put it is that it's about the various representations of female sexuality in general, or just like talking about women's bodies and the trauma that they go through.
Yeah.
And females even like go ahead.
Like just going into like the taboo of female sexuality.
Yeah, I was gonna say even positive female sexuality is frowned upon.
Yeah. But like in the ways that it was portrayed in Moral Oral, like thinking back specifically on Blaberta and how the season opens, and people are shocked with like the imagery of using like a power drill as a vibrator, but also like how often are vibrators referenced at all on television?
I don't like.
I don't even know. That's like one of the few times in a show I'd even seen.
That's
something like
it's
that.
more common.
It's more common today, but at the time that this came out, this was what 2008. Like
I
no,
think
it was
Yeah.
earlier. It was even earlier. right?
In 2005. I think the closest reference you would see to it was like a joke about a woman sitting on the washing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, just talking about vibrators is like taboo.
There's a skit on Adult Swim. I think it was called the Salad Mixer with 3 X's, where it's presented as like a 1950s product demonstration with a bunch of it's a vibrating dildo, but it's presented as though it's a salad mixer, and the whole joke of it is that the guy is talking about it like it's a salad mixer and making them demonstrate it, and the women are asking like very like subtly sexual leading questions. It's really funny.
I mean, if you look at vibrators from like the 50s and 60s, the vintage ones, they kind of look like kitchen utensils, and they have replaceable.
I'm also
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about that episode in Mad Men where Peggy is like testing a product that they're going to be advertising, and it's supposed to be like it looks like a pair of underwear, I think, and it's basically like supposed to be like, I think, to like it was supposed to like vibrate and shake, and it was supposed to like tone the body or something, but she puts it on and it's basically just like an underwear vibrator.
Yeah.
Even more modern day
another aspect of it is that like talking about that sort of thing positively is considered to be like, I don't know what it is. I think there's some kind of insecurity surrounding the idea of women using a tool to get off rather than like pursuing the attention of men.
Yeah, because
I do think we're
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say I do think we're straying a little bit from the context within moral oral, but we'll circle back.
No, I do want to talk about this because I think it's also important to like how Blaberta sees it as well.
I mean, it's a very different climate in Moralton than it is in like a standard day like stuff. So like I would like to approach that a little differently, and I have things to say about it. But go ahead and say what you want to say about like a current.
It's like we know that Stephanie is selling sex toys, and it's not. But at no point is it just like it's never implied she uses them. So I always thought that was kind of weird that we just know so little about her. I mean, I guess they wanted to be very careful with her character and not try to like turn her into a spectacle or make her like too, I suppose, alien to the audience. That's
like with Doll, we don't like, for example, the way they did that to make her like just normal like the rest of the business owners, because we never see Sal use his products, we never see Dolly drink.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say about kind of like the taboo of women using toys to like pleasure themselves. I also think like, within like just like a general society, but also like specifically in a place like Moralton where they place so much value on like the sexual bond between the husband and wife within the confines of marriage, and like it's just supposed to be the husband pleasuring his wife, and like their vision of that is very narrow. It's like penetrative sex where the man is penetrating the woman, and for a lot of women that's not going to be enough to pleasure them, and so they don't really have the concept to think about different kinds of stimulation that would help pleasure the woman. So in this society where they're not going to be encouraged or feel like safe or brave enough to go buy toys that are specifically designed for this, like of course they're going to go do something like buy power tools, which they can like pass off as something else just so they can try to feel that pleasure.
I was going to say
that's the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
In terms of the business owners, it's interesting with Don because I think to some extent it's implicitly understood that he knows what Blaberta's buying it for based on the conversation that they have, and he doesn't seem. Like,
I don't know. I don't
know.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think he might just be oblivious.
No, I feel he is.
What you feel like he's what?
I feel like he knows that she's definitely not the only woman who's doing that.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think that's not the case. I don't think that's not the case.
She specifically like asks for cylindrical objects, and he like just
she's clearly there a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
but like the way that they're marketed, like they are marketed like some of the stuff that was marketed early on when these things were first being sold.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
It's a back massager. It's a they find all these other uses for it. It's like a skin toner, you know. You
Oh
put
no,
it in
they're
like
not.
the-
But in Moralton, it's fucking golf ball hole diggers and shit. Like that is not cute. That is not
No, but
like
also,
that is not
it's not
chits, and
like
it
that.
does
It's
not
not
go on
just
your
that. It's not
counter.
just that. Like it's also like you can read the word dildo on the side of one. Like doctors, something lower back, okie dokie-izer. That's it is marketed for that. He knows what it's for.
I'm just saying, like they're not. They're
what have you
not.
been wanting to say?
Most of them are more frightening, I guess I would say, because they do cause like genuine harm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're not just cute little household items you massage your back with. Like they're fucking
No, because
they're digging holes in soil.
The thing is, because you know these things aren't supposed to be used for that, you don't have to put regulations on how to make them.
Yeah.
It's
Because
almost
you're not
it's sort of
putting it in the
punishing.
box.
It's like profiting off of women and also punishing them. But what have you been wanting to say, Sina?
Oh, well, I mean, I went over it in the script, but it's like it's the whole thing of it. Like women in Moralton are meant to be so, you know, ashamed of, you know, wanting to seek this stuff out because, you know, I wouldn't even doubt if like a lot of them just weren't even we see that clearly a lot of the women are not even having sex with their husbands just for various reasons. But like, you know, seeking this stuff out is sinful, so kind of in Moralton the whole way that it manifests is that these women have to physically harm themselves in order to even like attempt to, you know, pleasure themselves. And it obviously doesn't even bring them pleasure because we see that Bloberta can't even finish from them.
Well,
like
it's not to say that she's never been able to. Like,
well, we see that she doesn't in them.
No, I mean,
it seems like it's been like a long time that took her to get there. Like she's become numb. Maybe at one point she was able to.
Just the fact that she has multiple of them, it's an ascending order where it's starting with a really small one. And that's like, you know, it's like getting a bullet vibrator that you can hide and never have to let anyone see the box or anything, where, you know, if she's embarrassed about anyone finding that, no one's going to know if it's just like one little thing. And then, you know, later she finds, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. I need to get something bigger. And it's just continually like, changing for her, so she just continues to add to the collection
because it is a thing that happens in real life where it like and it's not to say that like
it's a little bit similar to the idea that like, you know, the more you consume pornography, the more desensitized you get for it and you start to seek out more extreme things.
And because like it is possible, like in real life it happens all the time, and it's not to say that she's like just decimating herself down there every single day, but if you do it for, you know, masturbation as it keeps you healthy emotionally and physically, you know, it's a good thing for your body. So if you're doing it frequently, which somebody who is not getting any sort of intimacy, whether that be sexual, emotional, or otherwise, would, you know, doing it frequently, you start to become physically desensitized. So she would have no choice but to escalate.
Yeah, which is why we see like how much easier it is for her to actually
satisfy
herself with something more connection based and not just like hammering her P word.
Sanding that shit off.
Stop. Do we want to go into the following
glory hallelujah?
Oh, Wes, did you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. Another thing, you know, comparatively to the whole thing of like self-punishing as you self-pleasure, that just like the glory hallelujah hole, as seen in the episode Pleasure, was that Christian / New Testament themed BDSM and role play club. And there we see examples of you know, just the average citizens of Moralton go in there to do things that excite them, and these things all have to do with sadism and masochism. So one example was the lions coming in to tickle the guy, or like a woman dressed as an angel and then whipping a guy dressed as the devil while riding on his shoulders.
And in a lot of these cases where like there's sort of like if you want to read into it, because I'm sort of like interested in that aspect of like the symbolic and psychological things behind certain things in BDSM. The women in these roles, when the women act as lions, they're the predator in the situation. The woman gets to whip the man. That's a role reversal of what we usually see in Moralton, where women are preyed upon, they are subjugated, and
Same for the angel whipping the devil.
Yes, exactly. Where the women are demonized for their emotions and their sexuality, and they're used to hoist up a man who is subjugating them. It's the reverse in that way. Or with, I love that Dolly is canonically a masochist. I love that about her.
Yeah.
She, instead of course, there's a layer to it that's like similar to the woman on the cross being stoned, where you get pleasure from shame and humiliation. With the self-flagellation, there's another layer to it, because doing it to yourself is sort of taking some of the it's like a combination of the role reversal and the pleasure from humiliation, where she's taking control of it. It's interesting that that's something that Dolly and Stephanie sort of have in common, in just the self-harm in a different context.
Dolly Steph agenda.
Yeah. You know those memes of characters reaching out where it's like, let's take ibuprofen together. Let's self-harm together.
Okay. We touched on Censordoll a bit. And in conversations amongst ourselves, she's got like quite a bit of like internalized misogyny. Considering how she, sees other women around her, and how she kind of prefers to sort of put herself on a more masculine pedestal.
Yeah, like it's kind of, this one is a little bit hard to word. I feel like how do we put this?
Well, let's start with the thing.
Oh wait, I have
Go ahead.
I have a thought about with her kind of aligning herself in a more masculine way. I'm also thinking about how thinking about how she interacts with men and women in the series. She interacts with men more as like a peer. But when she interacts with women, which we mostly see in Help, she's like their leader. Like she's like telling them what to do, and she controls them. But when she's interacting with men, it is. I mean, she obviously sees herself as being like above everyone, but when she interacts with men, it is in more of like a peer kind of setting.
I
think she thinks she's like
with them.
Yeah. I think she thinks she has like superiority over the other women as well, because she's more I guess like smart. She probably sees herself as more smart, especially regarding the Bible.
The thing with Tiny Tina, Glam, because like when you said this, it like
so
there was
my
like
thing
in my head.
So I was so excited when I realized this. Tiny Tina, her first scene, she is Tina No Heart. So her whole thing is that families, that they're assholes. They don't they're the worst. They're some of the worst of what Christianity has to offer. And Tina, she snitches on another kid for looking through the Renaissance art books. Censordoll doesn't even praise her. She focuses entirely on her anger towards the act. But then, I believe it's in the same episode, if I recall correctly, Oral does the same thing, and Fran is impressed with this. She sees this as something that she should nurture. She takes him on as an apprentice, and the only difference... Oh, also notably, Censordoll says in the mayoral race that burning books and censorship is a woman's job, or like something that ladies should do. The only difference between Tina and Oral, besides maybe like their level of religiosity, is that Oral is a boy. And in the same way that we know that Censordoll sees herself at least on par with God, to the point where it's shocking that God would make her feel inferior. And just as God, according to Christians, sent an avatar on Earth to do his bidding in the form of his son, Censordoll's bidding is also done through a male. Oral.
Yeah.
Which sort of gets us, if we're going to bite the bullet on it, which takes us to the possible Censordoll egg theory.
Which is not the typical sort of Censordoll egg theory, but
oftentimes people, they see Censordoll's perceived.
Look, we get the question a lot. We get the question of who are some characters you think might be trans. She's kind of been showing up on the radar.
Yeah, because people often see her perceived masculinity and say that she must be a trans woman, which is kind of like, or intersex, which I'm not intersex, so I don't know if there's any problematicness there. But Censordoll herself seems to very much align herself with the position of a man, not just in society, but I think it's in Alone where she's like the church is positioned, the way that she's sitting in front of her church model and stroking it is positioned exactly in the way that a man would be stroking his penis. Like, if viewer at home, go watch the scene right now. I'm telling you the truth.
We've done our Freudian reading of this, as in like the penis envy reading of it, but like there's other subtext to be read into it as well.
I guess really most of it is just like refer back to the part of the scripts where we talked about the way that Fran sort of, she only puts on femininity when it's useful to her. It's
she weaponizes it.
Yes.
Yes.
So besides Censordoll kind of taking on the well, you can't say that she's running her own business, but she is in charge of her own little area and has some dominion over it.
Because we don't really see anybody else in charge of the library ever.
No, but we do see Dolly like running for Getty's, and we see Stephanie running Buried Pleasures.
Yeah. They're both female business owners. It's the Dolly Steph agenda.
So who was it who said that this might be because they can't that they're they work there because they really can't leave?
Oh, me. So one of the theories that I had when I believe you'd asked like, oh, why is even Stephanie in Moralton? Someone brought that up. Well, one of the things I thought of was, women in Moralton, they don't really have a lot of job opportunities, and the majority of what they do, work in, I assume that they don't pay them very well. So my whole running theory was like a divorced, single woman in Moralton would kind of have no viable way of leaving if she wanted to try to pursue other things outside of, such a closeted community or cloistered.
Millie managed to get out somehow.
Yeah, she kind of strikes me as a nepo baby. Sorry.
My theory. Okay, I get it. This is so unfeminine. This is so unfeminist of me. But as you might know, that I love Millie very dearly. I want her to be happy with her tiara and all the jewelry she's wearing. My theory is that she got a sugar daddy.
Yeah,
I need her to have somebody who will see that she's beautiful.
But to round back to my point, it's like even Stephanie, she is going against the grain. She owns her own business, but she doesn't get business. She's kind of just living her truth. So she's still there despite the fact that, she could be going freaking to Sinville and probably make shit tons of money with her fucking shop. But she stays in Moralton because I don't think she can leave, realistically. I don't know. Maybe bus tickets.
There'd be a lot of competition.
I think it's an element of that, but then, I also just I don't know, maybe this is not related enough, but I think it is I think when Stephanie's a lesbian and we read Dolly as a lesbian, you can have your opinion on that, but we read her as one. People are always telling queer people or other marginalized groups why don't you just leave that place, if it doesn't treat you well. And it's well that's your home, and it's why should you have to just get up and go because people don't accept you? And it's so I think Stephanie making a place for herself there, and Dolly doing the same, I think it's it's kind of staking their claim of this is our community too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair as well. I think
go ahead.
Main thing it does make sense for the non-queer women though, in terms of their options, not people who own their own businesses. Now go ahead and go.
Oh yeah, Senna, you made a very good point. I just want to say that.
Yeah, no, go frolic, speak of the queers.
Okay, Dolly's the one female character who bears her midriff. That's so unusual in Moralton, considering just how how conservative their dress sense is. Even Bendy covers herself more than that.
Look at the way that people talk about Dolly. I think it comes with the barmaid aesthetic. It's almost expected of someone who is a bartender to be a floozy.
Yeah, I do want to speak on this really quick, just because I work in like a restaurant, so one of my coworkers is a bartender, and we were having a conversation once about like, how, at where I work, like it doesn't matter so much that we have a male bartender, but there are quite a few places where like it is a lot more lucrative to have a female bartender, and female bartenders can make way more money if they like really lean into, flirting with the customers and like kind of, you know, being that kind of like fantasy for them, I guess. And in a place like Forgetty's where like the clientele is like almost entirely men, Dolly's gonna make a lot more money leaning into that.
It's the Hooters logic.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen those videos from servers and stuff where they show the different amounts of tips they get depending on what kind of hairstyle they have in, and it's like crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Of course, they put like pigtails or 2 braids in, and they get like $1 bajillion in tips because men are like that.
Yeah, it really does. It really does matter. Like it sucks that it does, but it's like the look that you go into to work with and like that kind of environment, it can really like determine your livelihood.
Yeah.
So Dolly is definitely like paying her rent just based on Clay's daily intake.
I wonder if like if like how much sway he has in this, if like her or maybe she doesn't have like a mortgage on the bar, she like outright owns the building because of our headcanon that like she's Dolly Forgetty, but she's not the first Forgetty to own the bar. So it might be
it's like a family business that she inherited. So
she might not have to worry about like mortgage.
Yeah. That's true.
And that would be another thing that Dolly and Stephanie have in common with our headcanon about the Aloneford.
Yeah, because Stephanie, there's no way that she's paying rent from like the measly amount of sales that she makes at Buried Pleasures. So she's got to have some other source of income. Or maybe she's not even paying rent. Like, she lives at the Aloneford. Maybe she owns it.
Yeah.
Like, it was originally Gladys Stonewire's.
Yeah, that was our thought process. This is the original spinster.
Yeah, we just think like Gladys Filmwire has like landlord vibes.
She does. She really does.
She does.
She already has the skill of invading your privacy.
Yeah, being all up in your business and never actually helping you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've got a note down here about. Wes, did you write that?
Yeah, so like Stephanie running a sex shop isn't terribly unusual for her as a woman because the first sex shops in the US were run by women. I don't know where people were selling like sex toys before that. It may have been catalogs, it may have been like novelty shops, but like specifically a sex shop. Like specifically,
and we know that sex toys have almost all have existed since the dawn of time. We have like cavemen dildos.
Yes, they exist.
So at one point they were making them themselves. And it's interesting because it's going off of stereotypes. It's women being the purveyors of these things, not something you'd expect. But like women understand that their husbands are not going to be listening. The men in their life are not going to be listening to them about their sense of pleasure. I mean, the closest thing historically we have to men administering pleasure on women is when they thought that vibrators were a cure to female hysteria, which I mean works on me, but anyways. So women understood that they had to go, sisters are doing it for themselves.
Yeah. So this has been our video on the women of Moralton and the horrible lives that they lead living in Moralton. If you guys have other thoughts or ideas about things that maybe we touched on, maybe we didn't touch on it, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah, also if you enjoyed our more political chat in this episode, or maybe you were hearing about things happening for the first time, we encourage you to follow the news closely. use your voice, speak out to reach out to your representatives and say what you think about what's going on, what's affecting women, and all these other issues.
If you're watching this video right now and you're not a woman, and you feel like offended at any point, it take stock of that and listen. Think about the women in your life and what they may be going through, and try to take stock of the invisible labor that the women in your life might be doing, and realize that they're not just waiting on you hand and foot because they enjoy it. If you have a good relationship with your mom or sisters or whatever, send her some flowers, give her a call, go over and do the laundry for her, do something nice today for the woman in your life.
Yeah, and again, like if you felt called out or offended or anything by anything in this video, just consider that feminism is meant to help everybody.
Yes.
Like intersectional feminism is meant to make all of our lives better. It's not supposed to oppress anybody or
consider it growing pains.
Anyway, care about what's going on. Protest for reproductive rights and women's rights.
Yes. And as usual, if you have any questions for us, you can ask them on our Tumblr or our Neospring or, in the comments of wherever.
I'm going to throw in a donation link to Planned Parenthood in our description, so definitely check that out as well.
Yes. We need Planned Parenthood. All right. Thanks for watching.